Okay, so are you ready for this? We're diving into some seriously heavy material today.
Yeah.
We've got a leaked transcript,
Uh-huh.
and well, it's from an interrogation about missing virus samples.
Oh,
It
wow.
reads like straight out of like a biohazard nightmare.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what's really striking here is that we've got like a firsthand account, a look into the potential mind of someone who's like entangled in a bioweapon plot.
Yeah, it's not the scientist, right? It's not the mastermind. It's
Right.
someone claiming to be, like, caught in the gears of this whole operation.
Yeah.
This guy, James Alexander Ward,
Yep.
he says he was just a logistics coordinator.
And the details that he spills are,
Oh,
well,
they're unsettling.
yeah, to say the least.
Shell companies, secret labs, and, like, a meticulous selection process for weaponizing some of the deadliest viruses we know.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
He claims they were picking viruses based on how easily they spread,
Right.
how deadly they were, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe the scariest part, how resistant they are to current treatments.
That's what makes this so different from a typical outbreak, right? These weren't naturally occurring threats. They were actively, like, searching for viruses that could evade our existing defenses.
So, like, what exactly did Ward reveal about how they chose which viruses to weaponize?
Well, he describes these teams of virologists analyzing viruses looking for very specific traits.
Huh.
Think of it like a twisted shopping list for a pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he mentions wanting viruses that could spread like wildfires, especially through the air.
Yeah.
I mean, the implications of that in today's world with like constant travel and interconnectedness are terrifying.
Absolutely. The goal seems to have been to create a virus that could move silently and quickly across borders before anyone even knew it was happening.
And then, of course, they wanted viruses with a high mortality rate.
Right.
I mean, they were aiming for maximum impact, maximum casualties.
Yeah.
It's hard to even process that kind of deliberate cruelty.
It's a stark reminder of the potential for darkness within scientific advancement.
Yeah.
But it gets worse. They also prioritized viruses that are resistant to current treatments.
So they were targeting viruses for which we have no effective antiviral drugs or vaccines.
Right.
Imagine the panic that would ensue if something like that broke out.
The transcripts suggest they were essentially trying to engineer a situation where our medical systems would be rendered useless.
Right.
A true worst-case scenario.
And Ward claims they didn't stop there.
Really?
He says they modified the viruses to make them even more dangerous and difficult to combat.
Wow.
They were manipulating these deadly pathogens at a genetic level.
He uses the term optimization, which is such a chillingly sterile word for what they were allegedly doing.
Yeah.
It really highlights the disconnect between scientific terminology and the horrific reality of their actions.
Okay, so they've got these engineered superviruses.
Yeah.
How are they planning to actually unleash this nightmare?
Well, according to Ward, they had a disturbingly sophisticated and multi-layered plan.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't just about causing chaos. It was about carefully targeted dissemination. They had multiple methods ready to deploy, depending on the target and the desired impact.
This is where it starts to feel like a spy thriller.
Mm.
What kind of methods did Ward describe?
Well, he mentioned aerosol dispersal,
Uh-huh.
which is essentially releasing the virus into the air.
Okay.
He talks about drones silently flying over populated areas, releasing these viruses almost invisibly.
It's like something out of a dystopian movie, but it feels frighteningly real.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the water contamination strategy.
Right.
He says some of these viruses were adapted to survive in water for short periods, making it possible to contaminate water supplies in key cities.
I mean, the potential for widespread panic and chaos with something like that is almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
And what's even more disturbing is that he claims they considered using people as carriers.
He describes scenarios where individuals would be infected and sent into high-traffic areas like airports to spread the virus through person-to-person contact.
It's the deliberate weaponization of human beings.
Right.
Turning people into vectors of disease.
It's a horrifying thought. And there's one more strategy that's perhaps even more insidious.
With that.
Contaminating the food chain.
Oh, wow.
He mentions introducing the viruses into processed food or agricultural exports.
So they had plans for air, water, direct contact, and even our food supply.
Uh-huh.
It seems they were determined to cover every possible avenue of transmission.
It's a truly unsettling level of premeditation. And this raises the question.
Yeah.
Who are these individuals capable of orchestrating such a complex and horrific plan?
Right. Did Ward give any names?
Yeah.
He did. He named 4 key figures operating within Australia.
Okay. Let's hear it. Who are these alleged masterminds?
He starts with Dr. Adrian Kane, a leading virologist based in Melbourne.
Okay.
According to Ward, Kane was one of the brains behind the virus modifications, working out of a secret lab funded by, you guessed it, a shell corporation.
It's chilling to think that someone with Kane's knowledge and expertise could be operating under the radar like this. It raises serious questions about oversight within the scientific community.
Then there's Jenna Moore, a biochemist based in Sydney.
Okay.
Ward claims she was responsible for testing the virus stability and developing the aerosol delivery system.
So she's the one who allegedly figured out how to turn these viruses into airborne weapons.
Yeah.
It's a truly disturbing thought.
Next, we have Ethan Blackwell, an ex-military contractor based in Brisbane.
Okay.
He was apparently handling the logistics, the drones, and the distribution networks.
The transcript paints a picture of Blackwell as the muscle,
Yeah.
the one with the expertise to move these deadly weapons around undetected.
And finally, there's Claire Holden, operating out of Perth.
Okay.
Ward links her to the contaminated water systems and the development of what he calls bio-enhanced delivery methods.
We don't know exactly what that means, but it suggests further manipulation of the viruses or even the use of other biological agents to enhance their spread.
So we have a virologist, a biochemist, an ex-military contractor, and someone who seems to be an expert in water contamination. It's a terrifyingly well-rounded team, strategically positioned across Australia.
It paints a picture of a carefully coordinated network, potentially, with international connections we haven't even begun to uncover. And the scariest part, this network might be just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. So we've just laid out the disturbing details of this potential bioweapon plot, right? But now we need to grapple with the most perplexing piece of this puzzle.
Okay.
James Alexander Ward himself.
Yeah, you're right. We've heard his claims of being forced into his pleas for protection in exchange for information. But the big question that hangs over this whole transcript is, can we trust him?
Right.
Is he a victim, a manipulator, or something in between?
That's the challenge with a source like this, right?
Yeah.
We only have his word, his account of events, which could be colored by fear, a desire for revenge, or even just plain self-preservation.
Right.
We need to look closely at what he's saying, analyze his words for any inconsistencies or hidden motives that might give us a clearer picture of his true role in all of this.
So let's play detective here. What are some of the red flags that stand out to you in his testimony?
Well, right off the bat, his denial of any involvement is contradicted by the evidence mentioned in the transcript. He claims there's no video footage of him at the lab, but they seem to have something that places him there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This suggests he might be prone to bending the truth, even outright lying.
That's a good point. It makes you question his reliability from the very beginning.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of his level of knowledge.
Okay.
He claims to be just a logistics coordinator, a middleman.
Right.
But he seems to know an awful lot about the operation. He describes the science behind the virus modifications, the deployment strategies, even the names and locations of key players. It seems unlikely someone in his supposed position would have access to all of that information.
Yeah, you'd think someone in a more peripheral role would have a much more limited view of things.
Right. It's almost like he's trying to inflate his importance, perhaps to make himself seem more valuable to the authorities.
So he could be playing a dangerous game here, trying to cut a deal with the authorities, while also trying to maintain his usefulness to the people he's implicating.
Exactly. He could be trying to play both sides.
Right.
Which makes it incredibly difficult to figure out what he's really after.
What about his claims of coercion? He says he was forced into this, that his family was threatened.
Right.
Is there any way to know if he's telling the truth about that?
Unfortunately, that's one of the most difficult things to verify without further investigation.
Okay.
It's a claim that's easy to make, but incredibly hard to prove or disprove.
Yeah.
We'd need to delve into his background, his personal life, any connections he has to the other people involved, look for any signs of pressure or threats being made against him.
It feels like trying to unravel a tangled web.
Yeah.
The more you pull at it, the more complicated it becomes.
That's a great analogy. And then there's the question of his emotional state throughout the interrogation.
Okay.
He seems to jump between fear, desperation, and this strange sense of detachment. It's hard to get a clear read on him.
Yes, it's almost like he's resigned to his fate. Like he knows he's in over his head, but he's trying to make the best of a bad situation.
Which leads us to another important question.
Yeah.
Is he holding back information?
Hmm.
Is he strategically revealing details to ensure his own safety offering just enough to stay useful, but not enough to completely betray his alleged co-conspirators?
It's certainly a possibility. He could be trying to navigate this situation very carefully,
Right.
using his knowledge as leverage to try and minimize the consequences for himself.
And we can't rule out the possibility that he's driven by a desire for revenge. Maybe he feels betrayed by the people he was working with.
Right.
And he sees this as his opportunity to bring them down.
So he could be a whistleblower, a manipulator, a victim, or even a vengeful conspirator.
Yeah,
It seems like all the options are on the table at this point.
absolutely. And that's what makes this transcript so fascinating.
Right.
It's like a psychological puzzle.
Yeah.
And we may never know for sure what truly motivated him.
It's a good reminder that even when we're dealing with a potential global threat,
Right.
human motivations can be very complex.
Yes. And it's easy to get caught up in trying to figure out Ward's motivations, to get distracted by the human drama of it all. But it's important to remember that regardless of his intentions, the information he provides, the names, the locations, the timelines,
Right.
those are tangible leads. These are things that can be investigated, corroborated, potentially used to prevent a catastrophe.
You're right. The stakes are too high to let speculation cloud our judgment. We're talking about a potential pandemic, and we need to focus on what we can do to stop it.
Exactly. This transcript, regardless of Ward's personal motivations, gives us a starting point, a roadmap to uncovering the truth and stopping this nightmare before it unfolds.
So where do we go from here? What can we do with this information?
The real work starts now. We need to take Ward's revelations and use them to launch a full-scale investigation. Verify his claims, track down the individuals he named, secure those labs, locate those missing virus samples. It's a race against time, and the world is watching.
And that brings us to the heart of this whole situation, the potential global consequences of this plot. What would the world look like if these viruses were to escape containment? We'll explore that question in the final part of this deep dive. We've uncovered a lot in this deep dive, the chilling details of the plot, the alleged players, and the complexities of our key witness, James Alexander Ward.
Yeah, right.
But now we need to face the truly terrifying question.
Yeah.
What if this transcript is just the tip of the iceberg?
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
This one leaked transcript might just be a glimpse into something much larger, a
Yeah.
more extensive and insidious network operating beyond our current understanding.
We're talking about the potential for a global pandemic, meticulously engineered and deliberately unleashed.
Right.
The scale of the implications is hard to even fathom.
It is.
What would the world look like if these viruses were to break out?
Imagine a world consumed by fear and uncertainty. Borders slamming shut, cities going into lockdown.
Right.
Healthcare systems stretched beyond their breaking point.
Yeah.
Economies grinding to a halt.
Wow.
The very fabric of our interconnected society would be put to the ultimate test.
It's a bleak picture, but it feels like one we can't afford to ignore.
Right.
What are some of the biggest challenges we'd face in trying to contain a pandemic of this magnitude? Especially one with viruses specifically designed to be highly contagious, deadly, and resistant to treatment.
Well, first and foremost, we'd be facing a speed and scale of global transmission unlike anything we've seen before. Think about how quickly COVID-19 spread,
Yeah.
and then imagine something far more transmissible and far more lethal.
It would be like trying to contain a wildfire with a garden hose.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of treatment.
Right.
If these viruses are engineered to resist our existing antivirals and vaccines, we'd be starting from scratch and developing effective countermeasures.
Yeah.
And that takes time, valuable time that we may not have.
And while scientists are racing to find solutions, people are getting sick, people are dying.
Right.
Panic spreads like wildfire. Misinformation takes root.
Yeah.
And trust in institutions crumbles. It's a breeding ground for social and political instability.
You're hitting on a crucial point there. The societal impact of a pandemic goes far beyond the disease itself.
Right.
It can fracture communities, erode trust in governments,
Yeah.
and even fuel conflict and unrest.
And let's not forget the economic devastation. Global trade routes shut down.
Right.
Supply chains collapse. Businesses are forced to close.
Yeah.
Unemployment skyrockets. The financial fallout would be catastrophic, with ripple effects felt for generations.
It's a horrifying domino effect, with each falling piece exacerbating the chaos and instability.
Yeah.
This isn't just about a virus.
Right.
It's about the potential collapse of entire systems that we rely on for our well-being and security.
This whole scenario feels like a wake-up call, doesn't it?
It does.
A stark reminder of how interconnected our world is.
Yeah.
And how vulnerable we are to these kinds of threats.
Absolutely. And it forces us to ask ourselves, what
That's
can we do? How do we protect ourselves, not just from this specific threat,
right.
but from the broader danger posed by the weaponization of scientific knowledge?
It's a question with no easy answers.
For sure.
But where do we even begin to address something this complex and potentially devastating?
I think the first step is acknowledging the reality of biothreats. This isn't some far-off science fiction scenario.
Right.
It's a clear and present danger. We need to invest in robust surveillance systems, early detection mechanisms, and rapid response protocols.
So it's about being prepared for the worst-case scenario.
Exactly. And preparedness goes beyond just technology and infrastructure.
Right.
It's about building resilient communities,
Okay.
fostering trust between citizens and institutions, and promoting clear, accurate communication to counter the spread of misinformation.
And this can't be tackled in isolation. We need global cooperation, right? Pandemics don't respect national borders.
Absolutely. We need nations sharing information resources and expertise. A coordinated global response is essential in tackling threats that transcend borders and impact us all.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, doesn't it?
We are.
This leaked transcript has exposed a potential threat.
Right.
But it's also a reminder of our shared responsibility to protect our world and each other.
It's a call to action, a challenge to be informed, engaged citizens.
Yeah.
And to work together to ensure that knowledge and scientific advancements are used for the betterment of humanity, not for its destruction.
This has been a heavy but incredibly important deep dive. Thank you for joining us as we grappled with this complex and disturbing information.
Remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep asking those tough questions. This transcript is a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping a safer and more resilient future.